All right, we're live. Boilermaker fans, what's going on? I know it's been a couple of weeks since I've been on here. I think I said I was going to try to do this every week or so, do a preview, do a recap. That obviously has not gone. Um, as I close my YouTube channel, I don't want to hear myself talk. Anyway, I was on the Voice of College Football Iowa channel tonight, talking with Mark and Corey. Head over there if you like. Pretty good podcast. Podcast that Mark runs, and Corey does a great job with the Hawkeye of the Storm. Kind of went over the Purdue Iowa matchup, and I thought I'd jump on here real quick and just I don't know, start babbling about Purdue football. See who wants to join. Feel free to leave some comments in the comment section. I might open it up a little bit later on. To actually get video calls and or regular phone calls in this live stream, if that's something you are interested in. If not, all good. I'm just going to ramble on. And so with that, Purdue comes off a major win against Illinois, 44-19, and really was a must win for Purdue, in my opinion. This was a game that Purdue had to have. Obviously, going 0-3 at home is not ideal in any sense of the word ideal, and they needed this win. This is a big game for the program. Ryan Walters going against his old head coach, who he'd been with for the last 2 years. Obviously, recruiting grounds were at stake here. It was just a big game for the program. Ryan Walters kind of downplayed all of this in his post-game press conference, but we know that this was a big deal to Ryan, and no matter how much he downplayed it, this meant a lot. This was a big program win, and Purdue looked good. This is the first time I think Purdue's played, for the most part, a complete game. That third quarter was a complete takeover for Purdue. They played incredible in that third quarter, going 21 unanswered points. The team just looked solid. They looked good from the offensive side of the ball. They looked good from the defensive side of the ball. Special teams were pretty good. They just looked good as a unit. And maybe finally the light bulb, if you will, has kind of turned on for this Purdue football team. Last week in that Wisconsin game, they had a really bad start. Terrible start. Didn't look like they were fired up to play, which was kind of surprising to say the least. They came out in that second half and they looked much better. They looked much better on the defensive side of the ball. They were moving the ball on offense. If it wasn't for that horrendous officiated forward pass that they called a fumble, or forward pass that they called a fumble that Devin picked up and then, got it stripped. I think Purdue would have won that half. So I was hoping, going into the Illinois game that things would, maybe have clicked and they could, build upon the second half of that Wisconsin game. And luckily, it looked like that is what happened with this Illinois game. Purdue looked good. They looked except they came out strong. First half played pretty good. Still had a bit of up and downs, obviously, with the Maccabee fumble. But for the most part, they looked pretty good. Second half, again, they looked great. So that was great to see. Some big changes here, though, obviously, because Ryan Walters showed that he actually is willing to change things in his program that, aren't working out. And what I'm saying that is he decided to put Kevin Kane up in the press box along with Graham Harrell. Again, those might not seem like big things maybe, but they are big things. And here's why. Well, let's just go with Graham Harrell real quick. So Graham Harrell, I guess Graham Harrell actually is used to being in the box from what I heard today on a podcast. That's actually where he's been. I've not actually paid attention to where he's been, previous to his Purdue stops. So that maybe that was more natural for Graham. He goes back up there. But the defensive side of the ball, it was nice to see that they went back to what worked last year at Illinois with Kevin Kane in the press box, kind of the eye of the sky. And then it sounds like, for all indications, is Ryan Walters actually called the defense. Now, the question is here, what I'm asking too, and I don't know if we've gotten a complete answer on this, is Kevin Kane's obviously still the defensive coordinator. Is Kevin Kane still calling the defense like he did, the first 4 weeks? Or did they truly go back to the exact same setup they had at Illinois, where Kevin Kane was Ryan Walters' eye in the sky. Kevin Kane's, basically making suggestions, but Ryan Walters is ultimately the decision maker, and he's the one calling the defense. I don't know if Ryan's going to give an exact answer on that. I'm not sure his answer at the post-game press conference or his press conference yesterday. I don't think he was very clear on that. I think he is obviously, calling the defense as the game goes on. The question is, though, are those Kevin Kane play calls or is that Ryan Walters play calls? And Ryan Walters is obviously a very talented DC, so I think it makes sense for him to call the defense because that's obviously his strength. That's part of the reason why he was hired. You might as well do what you're good at. So that was nice to see. I kind of made a joke on the Iowa podcast. It's kind of nice, having this staff that will actually make changes. Unlike some other staffs, like a Brian Ferentz staff, or not Brian Ferentz, but Kirk Ferentz staff that is so set in their ways, they're not going to change anything no matter what. So to me, that's actually a big deal that Ryan Walters is able to take a look at his program in game number 5, say, you know what, we need to make these adjustments. And he made the adjustments. So that's nice to see that he's learning. He's not too big of an ego, and he's going to make adjustments when needed. So that was good to see. The defense, to me, sorry, I got a little sore throat going on. Getting over COVID that I had about a week and a half ago, so still have the cold-like symptoms. But anyway, the defense to me looked a lot more aggressive than it did the first 4 weeks. It seemed like they were blitzing more. I'm not sure. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, either in the live stream or the comments later on. I don't know if we've seen a cornerback blitz all year, so that was awesome to see. Merkevius Brown came off that corner delayed blitz. Seemed like he sprinted 40 yards, but he caused a fumble, and then Langham was able to dive on in the end zone for our first defensive touchdown, I believe, of the year. Which when that happened, that changed the momentum of the game. Illinois did take the lead for a brief moment, but then we were able to get it back. Purdue, to me, looked like the better team, which they needed to. The one team, I've not watched a ton of college football this year, but the one team I have kind of been able to see, I think, every one of their games, a decent amount of it, not a ton, was Illinois. And to me, Illinois has not looked very impressive all year. I was kind of saying that, excuse me, Illinois, was going to take a step back. I thought some of the preseason predictions for them were too high. I wasn't sold on their offense. I knew their defense was missing a lot of pieces, and obviously we took a lot of their staff. So I didn't think, though, they would be this bad. Their offensive line was supposed to be a strength. It's horrendous. I think listening to some Illini talk, it seems like the offensive line may have been overrated last year, and the running back Chase Brown and quarterback, I'm completely blanking on his name, the Italian guy who was a quick throw, Tommy DeVito. That's it, Tommy DeVito. He made them look pretty good, the offensive line. He had quick throws. Chase Brown was elusive, and they made that offensive line look a lot better than they actually were. So this Illinois team's been a big disappointment. They're not the greatest team. We'll see how they finish the year, but it doesn't matter. Purdue needed to have this win. There was a lot of pressure on Purdue, I believe. Like I said, they were 0-3 at home. Had to have this one. They were able to get it. Big time win for Purdue. Love to see it. Now, be curious for anyone watching this live, and if you watch this after it's been recorded live, how that changed your projections for the season. I know for me it did. I kind of, Cole and I mentioned a little bit ago that we were looking at I think Cole was a little more optimistic than I was, but we were both looking at 7-ish wins, 6 wins. I think we said we'd be happy with 6 wins going to a bowl. That, to me, that would be the not ultimate success, but that would be a successful season. And I thought with this schedule we possibly could get 7 wins. Wasn't 100% sure. Had to see the team. There's a lot of missing, or a lot of parts coming together that needed to happen. Kind of a wait and see approach in that. So I tell you, after the first 4 weeks, though, the Illinois game, going into this Illinois game, to me was a put up or shut up game. This game I thought would kind of set the tone for the rest of the season, and Purdue came out and played their best game. So to me, it kind of changes the outlook of the season. The season doesn't look so daunting, that schedule, as maybe it once did. Obviously, Michigan, Ohio State, not much has changed there. It's probably 2 losses, but Michael, thanks for being here. Michael Hogg says, I see Purdue winning 3 of their next 5 games. I mean, it's definitely possible. Obviously, with that schedule, that has to include Iowa being one of those, I'm assuming, Michael. Actually, I got to even pull up the schedule. That's something that I haven't looked at in great detail. So, obviously, we got Iowa coming up at Iowa, 3:30 on Saturday on the Peacock. And then the following week, we are once again on the Peacock at noon, and we have a home game against Ohio State. I'm assuming, Michael, you had that as a loss. So we'd be 3-4. Purdue at Nebraska. I mean, Nebraska doesn't look very – oh, there's a bye week. Excuse me. So we have a bye week after Ohio State. Then we play at Nebraska. You would think a rested Purdue team should be able to win that game. Nebraska keeps losing players as well, and their depth is not good. I think Purdue probably wins that game. There's your second win. Michigan at Michigan is probably a loss. And then Purdue plays Minnesota at home. So I got to say, Michael, you know what? I agree with that 100%. And I would take that one step further and say, not only does Purdue win 3 out of the next 5 games, they have a very good chance of winning 5 out of the next 7 games. I mean, you think about it, because the last 2 games on the season is at Northwestern and Indiana. That should be 2 wins. So 3 out of 5 might be, I mean, it's possible. Wouldn't surprise me, though. Even if we win 2 out of 5 and then we win their last 2 games, that's 6 wins right there. That's a bowl game. So to me, that's a good season. As long as this team continues to show improvement, gets to a bowl game, that would be great. Even if this team now wins 5 games, if they go 5-7, they show they have, they're able to somewhat compete with the Ohio States and Michigans, maybe not get embarrassed. If they play tough against the rest of the schedule and they win and they beat IU, and they play tough against everybody else, 5-7 might not be the end of the world. I know this was kind of discussed on Gold and Black, but I think I said it, in this kind of era where everybody kind of opts out of the bowl games and, people go into the portal, it might not be the worst thing in the world if Purdue shows signs, only wins 5 games, if Purdue is 5-7 and we don't go to a bowl game, because the transfer portal is open during that time. And it seems like there's a lot of portal activity, a lot of commitments happening, a lot of stuff going on during that time. And if Purdue's coaches are able to focus, solely on the portal during that time, that could be an advantage. At that point, they've had the team for a year. They know where the holes are. They know where they need to recruit. Just something to think about. That could be an advantage to Purdue. I mean, but obviously the catch-22 of that is it could be somewhat of a disadvantage because at the same time, you don't have those players, in the Purdue buildings for those, 3+ weeks or whatever it is, and they're at home or whatever, and they're getting other people in their ear, and next thing you know, this guy or that guy's entering the portal. So kind of a catch-22, but I mean, so preferably I would take the bowl game, but all I was saying there is, if Purdue only wins 5 games, that's not, I don't think, the end of the world, especially if they show progress continuing this season. And, Ryan Walters is correcting some mistakes and just showing improvement. So I thought that, again, the Illinois game to me really changed my perspective. Not that I was down on Ryan Walters. I know some of the comments were getting a little ridiculous, comparing him to Darrell Hazel, which I thought was a joke. He's nowhere near Darrell Hazel level, obviously. But he's shown he's capable of making the right decisions, and obviously this Illinois game, he showed that he's capable of making adjustments with moving coordinators around and again, him calling the defense. Michael says the wins I see is Nebraska and Minnesota, and wouldn't be surprised if they shock the world if they beat Ohio State. I tell you what here, Michael, I've watched a little bit of Ohio State. They're Ohio State. I don't think Ohio State's as impressive as Michigan. Now, do I think we'll beat Ohio State? Probably not. But if Purdue goes into Iowa this Saturday and wins, that Ohio State game is going to be interesting. I think there will be a lot more eyeballs on that game, and I'm betting that the Peacock executives, which, again, if you didn't miss it, or if you've missed it, Purdue is on Peacock 3 games in a row. Continuing from last week, we got on the Peacock again this week, and then Peacock again next week, or excuse me, the following week after this weekend against Iowa State. They would love that. I think they would prefer a Purdue victory, because that Purdue, a 3-3 Purdue that's winning 2 games in a row and kind of turning it around, I think would draw some eyeballs against Ohio State, especially with the past history. And Michael says again, just going back to the past history with Ohio State and Ross State. Exactly. Now, do I think it will happen? Probably not. But if Purdue beats Iowa, this team gets more confident as long as they come out and they maintain their health for the most part. Could Purdue give Ohio State a game? Quite possibly. Again, I've not paid a ton of attention to Ohio State. I know that their offense kind of struggled against IU, but that was the first game. They obviously have studs at wide receiver, running back. I think the quarterback play, though, is not the greatest. So you never know. Kind of for me, this Iowa game, and I've not paid a ton of attention to Iowa this year. I mean, I've obviously kind of kept tabs on the scores. The first time actually me watching them live was against Michigan State. I probably watched maybe a quarter's worth of football in that game. I did not see Cade at all in that game. I saw when Deacon Hill was in. If you've not heard, Cade McNamara, who actually injured himself preseason, has not been 100% all year. He's kind of been hobbled. He's looked okay from my understanding. He, though, got hurt in that Michigan State game after a pretty strong first drive. He is out for the year now. Deacon Hill, who is the backup quarterback that transferred in from Wisconsin, is now the starting quarterback. Hill's a big boy. He is 6'5", 260. Kind of a mini Ben Roethlisberger, if you will. The good news on Deacon Hill is he's not super mobile. He's not like a Garrett Schrader. Garrett Schrader's another big boy, but he does not have the agility or the speed like Garrett Schrader does. I don't think he's going to be taking off and sprinting on this Purdue team, which is good news for us, as obvious Purdue has struggled against mobile quarterbacks all year. Doesn't sound like Deacon Hill is that guy. But I was joking with the Iowa on the Iowa podcast that, Purdue's kind of got a history of making backup quarterbacks look like Heisman candidates in their first start, going back quite a ways. I remember even as a kid when Notre Dame, they started that backup tight end or whatever, Godsey or something like that, and he looked great. Another example is Rocky Lombardi, Michigan State. I think at the day, I believe it was the game after Purdue beat Ohio State, I want to say, in that Tyler Trent game. We went to play Michigan State, and it was Rocky Lombardi at quarterback, and he just lit us up. We have a history of making backup quarterbacks look great, so good to have. That's good news for them. But obviously, this is a different era. We'll see what happens. From what I saw of Deacon Hill and what I've read on Deacon Hill, he's got a pretty good arm for the most part. He seems to have a little bit of, I think it was Kyle Orton that had the problem. Maybe it was even Curtis Painter, that they threw a fastball no matter what. That was like the only speed they knew. So you have these crossing routes or shallow routes, and he's, throwing the ball 100 miles an hour every time, and it's just, ricocheting right off the wide receiver hands. That is a skill that is needed for a quarterback. Otherwise, you can't throw rockets every time and expect the wide receiver to catch it when they're 5 yards in front of you. So that's something to look out for. I wouldn't be surprised to see a few tipped balls like that, or, going off Iowa receivers' hands this Saturday. Could be opportunity for some interceptions. But again, I'm not an expert on Iowa this year. From my understanding, their defense is pretty solid, like it always is. I think their front four is not quite as good as it was last year. They had some, I think, really good defensive tackles, and their sack numbers are down. So they're not necessarily, great. I mean, well, they're pretty good up front, but they're not, I guess, exceptional up front. We might be. Their linebackers are good. Their secondary is good. But people have been able to dink and dunk on these guys this year. So I think Purdue, who was pretty balanced this year, seems like they're more like 50-50 between run and pass this year, should be able to somewhat move the ball at least a little bit. The key, though, obviously is going to be don't turn the ball over, play smart, probably going to have to play some of that field position ball game against Iowa and play sound defense. Don't beat yourself. It's kind of what Michigan State was doing a little bit, but Michigan State, who I think is a worse team than Purdue, they've obviously had some issues with Mel Tucker and all kinds of other stuff. That whole situation. They look like they were pretty decent against Iowa. But, they made some mistakes like they always do. Or not they necessarily, but a lot of teams do against Iowa. They threw an interception in the end zone on a bad pass, and they punted to Cooper DeJean, who took one to the house to basically seal that ball game. So I think if Purdue can play sound football on defense, pretty much hold Iowa to field goals, and we move the ball from time to time, I think we have a pretty good chance in this game. Now, if we continually turn the ball over, or if Maccabee, has some fumbling issues like he has had, we could be in trouble. We just got to play again sound defense, be patient on offense. This is going to be, I think, a pretty good test for this Purdue football staff, this young staff, to see if they can play a patient ball game. Which Ryan Walters and company, they're familiar with Iowa. I believe Illinois beat them last year at Illinois in a I think like a 9-6 ball game. I'm going to look that up. But I remember watching most of that game, and it was an absolute defensive slugfest. 6-9. Illinois won that game. It was a barn burner, let me tell you. It might have to be, hopefully not 6-9, but, it might have to be a 14-12 type victory for Purdue. We get 2 touchdowns and hold them to, 3 field goals. So let's say, I think I am. So I've talked for 20 minutes. I'm losing my voice. I think I am. And we only have a few of you guys on here, which is totally fine. I just needed to get something out there. I think I am going to actually open it up. I'm going to drop a link. If anybody wants to join the stream, feel free to do so. Let me get it on here. There it is. The link is going to be in the comment section. Feel free to jump on if you like. And again, you don't need to have a microphone, or you do need a microphone. You don't need to have a camera per se. You can keep the camera off. It will. You can actually use your phone to call in, I believe, on the StreamYard, and just and talk like a normal phone call. But if you'd like to jump on, feel free. Ted Berkey's here. Hey, Ted. It will be low scoring. Just depends on how much we can score. I don't think Iowa will score over 17 on offense. Yeah, that's a good point, Ted. And on my Iowa show today, again, I've not really scouted Iowa. I can't talk. I have not scouted Iowa a whole lot this year. But Corey Brada, who is a very good podcaster for Iowa, was saying we were going over some stats, and Iowa is dead last once again in total offense. They are 130th out of 130. And we obviously all know about this this 25-point clause that was put in Brian Ferentz's contract. That's pretty much a joke. It doesn't even matter what I guess how that point is scored. Brian still gets credit. So that special teams touchdown, which gave Iowa 26 points, that's 1 point over the 25, goes towards the race to 25. And I believe they're averaging 22 points. I think they're 3 points below the 25-point standard. But yeah, I think you're right, Ted. They're going to have it's going to be low scoring, and they do have a lot of injuries on offense as well, as you just said. Just prevent defense and special team scores, and we have a chance. Again, if we turn the ball over if we have a game like we did against Syracuse, that whole game basically, or if we have a game like we had in that first half against Wisconsin, we're going to be in trouble. Just got to take care of the ball. I know Ryan Walters is probably preaching ball security even more this week, especially with Devin. Even Tyrone Tracy, we kind of joked about, Corey being an Iowa guy. He knows he kind of and I remember hearing this too, is Tyrone Tracy had some ball security issues at Iowa. And he does kind of carry it a little bit loose, but, knock on wood, so far he obviously has a very strong grip because nobody's been able to knock it out yet. But he's going to have to, and it's against his former teammates, so he's going to really have to secure that ball on Saturday. And again, if you're just joining, if you guys, anybody wants to actually jump on the stream, the StreamYard link is in the comments section. Just click on that, and I can add you to the stream. You don't have to have a video camera. You can talk if you have a microphone on your computer, or you can actually even call in using your cell phone. That also works. So feel free to jump on. So I'm just getting over COVID. I think I'm 9 days in. I'm not contagious or anything, but the cold-like symptoms have not gone away yet. So I'm hanging in there. But also curious. I know there's a few of you now on the comments. What your guys' season predictions are for the rest of the year? How many total wins do you see? Obviously, this can change with every week. But as I said earlier in the podcast, this Illinois game to me was going to be a game where I don't really have any expectations as far as how I didn't do like a prediction on it either. I wanted to sit back and watch the game and see what Purdue team showed up, and and to me it was a kind of a judge and a gauge on how we're going to be kind of the rest of the year. And I'm not saying we're going to play like that the rest of the year, but to me that was a monster game. Might have been one of the most important games of the season. Not just from a program standpoint. That obviously is important for its own factors and recruiting. Ryan Walters now obviously has the he one-upped Brett. He's kind of as the old Star Wars adage goes, I once was the apprentice, now I'm the master. And he can go into recruit's house and say, I really was the guy that made Illinois look good the last couple of years, because Illinois this year does not look good. So that's good for Ryan. Michael says, I said before the season started, Purdue would be 8-4 or 7-5. Yeah, that's kind of what we said on this podcast. I was 7-5. Cole was 8-4, which I think Cole admitted that he might have been one game too much, but or 5-7 on the bad side. Yeah, I said I think my official prediction on here was 7-5 was. Well, I said 8-4 was the ceiling and 4-8 was the floor, but I thought we'd be, 6-6 or 7-5, which 7-5 was my official prediction. Which, Michael, going back to what you said earlier, 7-5 is not. It's not out of the realm of possibilities. They beat Iowa. 7-5 is really not out of the realm of possibilities. It's all you got to do is you got to take care of business against IU, Northwestern, Minnesota. Minnesota looks okay. That's 3 wins right there. In Iowa, that's 4 wins, and then at Nebraska. Part of this prediction as well is, the Big Ten West truly does not look good. From week 5, by week 5, you kind of have an idea of what these teams are. That's another, I think, important win for Purdue on week 5. By week 5, you kind of know what you have. And if you guys do some history, and you may already know this, but the Ryan Walters era in Illinois and Missouri kind of got off to a bit of a rocky start. Missouri was a little bit different because he was a co-defensive coordinator. And Illinois was even a little bit different because I don't think they implemented his system until game 5. But anyway, where Ryan Walters started, game 5 is when things have turned around for him at Illinois and Missouri. I'll be that. Is that a Ryan Walters thing or what? But I don't know. Being that we looked pretty good week 5 and played our best football, maybe there's something to that it takes 5 weeks to kind of get the system in place, and maybe that's the case here. Ted says, I still think 4 or 5 wins as well, as we still need to build consistency. We don't know who will show up half to half. That is true, and that's why, Ted, I think this Iowa game again. I'm kind of going into it just like I went into the Illinois game. I am my expectation. I don't think I'm even going to do a score prediction. I'm just going to kind of sit back and enjoy it and watch it and see what team shows up. And if Purdue, if they show up and compete and win the game, then maybe, if they do it 2 weeks in a row, maybe at that point, well, then you have Ohio State. You have Ohio State coming in, but maybe at that point, you can make some more outlandish predictions on that Ohio State game and say, you know what, maybe we can do it 3 weeks in a row. But someone that's seen Ohio State, I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are and how good that Ohio State team actually is. Don't want to look ahead too well. Doesn't matter. We're fans, not players. But I know the players' focus is 100% on Iowa. That's a big game. I mean, too, if you beat Iowa, then you have to assume, maybe the Big Ten West race isn't, out of possibility either. I know that's kind of crazy talk. The problem is obviously you got Michigan and Ohio State there, so you assume that's 2 losses. So I don't know if 6-3 last year was enough to do it, but 6-3 this year might be kind of tough because I assume Wisconsin's going to be up to 5 wins or 5 wins. Is going to lose less than 3, maybe just 2. Ted Berge says we could get to 7 wins due to the Big Ten West, but that doesn't say much about Purdue. We still need to get better. I just want 6 wins to get to the bowl practices. Yeah, I agree with you, Ted. I mean, that's ultimately the goal, is to go to a bowl game. I think, though, even if the Big Ten West is crappy, who cares for Purdue, right? And 7 wins still looks better than 6. And, maybe ultimately the people outside of the Big Ten and people outside of Purdue in general, will look at 7 wins in a pretty positive light. So that I think that could do some pretty good press for Purdue if he can get to 7 wins. Yeah, I don't think Wisconsin's having 4 losses, as you just said, Ted. What 4 losses will Wisconsin have? I think Wisconsin, based off what I've seen, is by far and away the best team in the Big Ten West. I think we'll see what Iowa does against Purdue, but Iowa being down to a backup quarterback, they've had quite a few injuries on offense. I think I have to look at it further. I know they lost some running backs, and maybe Michael, maybe what running backs they've lost, but I think they've lost 2 of their guys at running back. I know the starting tight end's hurt, but I think they might be getting a running back, but I feel like they've lost 2 running backs. So I think Wisconsin obviously lost against Purdue. They lost their backup running back, is pretty good, and Moosey or whatever his name is. Michael says, I see Purdue gets the wins as Minnesota, Nebraska, and Western IU. Yeah, those teams are pretty bad. I think Minnesota is Illinois level bad. They've not played the schedule, though. I'm not impressed with Minnesota. I've kind of been saying that in the offseason as well. Some people were hyping Minnesota up. I don't think Minnesota is very good. They're kind of in the same boat as Illinois. Their quarterback's not very good. I don't see them beating Purdue. Yeah, thanks, Michael. Let's see, I'm Lucy. That's the name. He had that pretty gruesome injury against Purdue. But yeah, at that point, Purdue at this point, though, too, we got to stay healthy. We lost Max Clare today. I'm sure many of you know, who has been pretty promising so far. He's going to have a pretty bright future for Purdue. Sounds like he had surgery today, based off his Instagram photos that were shared. He was in a hospital bed, excuse me. Most likely means it's not been officially ruled out by Purdue, but I would assume that's season-ending surgery, which is too bad. That was a pretty freak injury that he had. The turf monster got him, and he went down. And I don't know what exact injury it was, but it sounds like he had surgery to fix it. And I would have to bet a large sum of money that he's out for the year. So that's a tough loss. The only, I guess, positive there is Garrett Miller has kind of gotten off his pitch count, if you will. He came back against Virginia Tech and only played a few plays. And then it's kind of been, upping his plays a little bit here and there. But that's where we're at there. So I think Garrett Miller will continue to play more, and now he's going to have to. He's going to be starting tight end. Bieber will play a little bit more. And then, unfortunately, it sounds like Pulpa Ferry, who I thought had a pretty good year last year, and very good pass-catching tight end, I think would have done pretty good in this offense. It sounds like he is. He might also be out for the year. It sounds like he might have a back issue. So that's kind of – I know that's not really been asked by the media, for surprisingly. Yeah. Sorry, I was getting a text. Kind of, surprised nobody's clarified that, but it sounds like Paul might be out for the year, especially now that that Claire's out, and he would be needed. Again, if you guys are just joining the show, and anybody wants to jump on to the stream, the link is in the comment. Feel free to jump on. You can save my voice from going completely out. Let's see here. I was kind of looking at some of Purdue's stats as a team, and wasn't totally shocked to see we're actually pretty in the middle of a lot of things, ranked in the 50s and 60s. So we're not terrible at many things, and not not outstanding. We're kind of balanced, kind of how this offense is. Ooh, Craig Mockabee, what's going on, Craig? Good to be here. Let's see. I would like to see Card be sneaky and use his legs to pick up 6 to 7 yards, then baseball slide. That's enough to keep the team from focusing on one player. Iowa can't guard everyone. That's a great point, Craig. I know there's been talk on the boards. It was kind of a rusty start or bad start for kind of the read option that we were running. I'm still not the greatest fan of it, but part of the problem was, Card never would run it on the read option. He would just give it to either, Tracy or Mockabee every time. And there's really no point of running the read option when you're just going to hand it off to the running back every time. You eventually have to, run it yourself. And as Purdue fans, not even just football fans, just if you're a Purdue fan, you've seen that this year based off of other teams like Syracuse, for example. Wisconsin did it to us, and even the Illinois quarterback did it to us the very first play of the game. And I don't know, I'm sure everybody here was like, oh boy, here we go. That very first play of the game where he did the read option, and he kept it. Lukey Legs kept it and went for, 30-something yards. I'm sure I about threw the pillow to the TV because it's just like, how has this not been cleaned up? But that's what the read option looks like, and Hudson's not really done that great so far, but I think the last couple games he actually has kept it a little bit more, and that's made a big difference. I mean, even against Wisconsin, he kept it a tiny bit more, and we ran against them for like 194, which is something we've not done in forever. I think the last time we ran like 194 yards against Wisconsin was in 1996, and we ran against 190 yards against Illinois. So, but I agree. I think this Iowa game's a big game where Hudson really needs to use his legs. He's going to have to get those 4 to 5, as you said, 6, 7 yards, go down, slide, because we can't afford to have him injured, and just kind of take what they give you. And going back to Craig, I know Devin's had a few ball security issues, but I was really glad that the coaches had the trust in him and put him back in the ball game. I think that showed faith in Devin, and you could tell Devin was he was securing that football very nicely. And that after that fumble, that was strong running from Devin, and he looked good in that second half. Yeah, Michael. Yeah, same to you. Yeah, no worries. Hope to see you at a game as well. I don't know if I'll be out there later on or not. I was at the Syracuse game and took my daughter to her first game. That was a little bit disappointing, but it's all right. Probably hopefully get to that IU game would be fun, I think. But yeah, if anybody wants to hop on to the stream, feel free. The link is in the comment section. If nobody does hop on, I'll probably get off in the next 5 minutes or so, just because I'll probably be losing my voice if I keep talking. But or keep those. If you don't want to get on, keep those comments coming. Much appreciated. Helps drive this thing along. Be curious what your guys' thoughts. I mentioned this earlier. You think Ryan Walters is actually calling the defense himself? Is he taking over? I know he's signaled in the plays. I think we all 100% know that. But I would be curious what your thoughts are if Ryan Walters, in your opinion, has actually kind of become the DC, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Have they gone completely back to the Illinois model of last year where Ryan's making the play calls? He's the one actually dialing up, and Kevin Kane's more of an advisor. Because to me, that's what it looked like. It looked like a different defense out there. And I thought Yanni Karlaftis looked very good. He's not as athletic, obviously as he's not as athletic as OC Brothers. OC Brothers was hurt this weekend, did not play. But I think where OC's struggled a little bit this year with making the right read, and that was really obvious against like teams like Syracuse and Wisconsin. Yanni seemed to settle in nicely and seemed to play a lot better. Oh, it's Cameron Day. What's going on, Cameron? Defense looks like butt. Yeah, I mean they they didn't look good the first couple weeks, but I was saying, I don't know if you were on earlier, but I was saying in Ryan Walters' last two stops at Illinois and Missouri, a little bit different situations, and this might not even be, all things being equal, but it seemed like it took 5 games for that team to kind of figure things out. So maybe that's what we'll see here. But I mean, the defense, I think their biggest struggle so far is, a lot of people have been ripping on Cam Allen. I think he's actually getting a little bit better in coverage. He's not used to playing man coverage, so maybe it was going to take him a few games. I mean, hell, he's a 6-year senior. He's been playing safety, his whole career here, and now they've asked him kind of to play a different position. And it might take him. Maybe it's going to take Cam a few games, and he played a little bit better. The main problem has been, and it happened again, play number 1 is I think our defensive, our ends aren't setting, or they weren't at least setting the edge properly. I think they did fix it right away after that Illinois game, but that's why we're getting destroyed on these quarterback runs, because nobody's there staying home or setting the edge. But I'll be very interested, Cameron, to see what this defense looks like against Iowa. Backup quarterback, a lot of players missing for Iowa, injuries. And, if we make Deacon Hill look like a, let's just say an upgraded version of McNamara, that might be a problem, and that might not be a good thing on our defense. And obviously Brian Ferentz is their coordinator, so it's like, come on, how good can they really be? Cam Allen looks like he has weights on his ankles. he's not the fastest guy out there, that's for sure. But like I said, I'll give Cam credit. He's looked a little bit better. I don't think he was picked on very much against Illinois. Purdue 2.5 a lock. Whew. I mean, again, I'm not even going to make predictions. Like I've said, I'm in wait and see mode. Just going to enjoy it. But if Purdue doesn't turn the ball over, and Iowa does Iowa, I mean, I don't. It's going to be a close game. Ted Berkey says it is hard for anyone to learn the Walters defense since Walters says it's based on his feelings. How do you get the DC to learn to call it as well? Yeah, that's a great point, Ted. The difference between Kevin Kane and Ryan Walters, it seemed, again, that's why I think Ryan did call the defense and not just signal it in. I think he was the ultimate play caller on Saturday because it just seemed like a different defense. It seemed like it was more aggressive. Like that, again, that corner blitz that he dialed up near the goal line. I don't think Kevin Kane, who somebody correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, I don't think we've had a corner blitz all year. Maybe we have, but we definitely have not had a corner blitz in that situation all year. So the fact that he did that kind of leads me to believe that was a Kevin Kane, that was a Ryan Walters call, not a Kevin Kane call. Craig says, my eyes have been on number 13, Jerron Tibbs, and those one-handed catches videos. I believe he will be a big target for Card once he sees the field too. Yeah, I mean, he's looked pretty good in those videos. I know what you're talking about, Craig. Very athletic guy. I don't know what his measurables are. I think he's like 6'2", I want to say, maybe 6'1", but I'll tell you who I still am really disappointed that he tore his ACL in the preseason. I was really looking forward to seeing, just based off the video. And again, I did a video earlier this summer where I talked about the newcomers, and one of the guys I was most excited about was Jamali Dream. I was watching his spring highlights at FAU. I watched his season highlights. That dude is kind of a freak in his own right. He's kind of Deion Burke's freak with bigger size, but man, I think he would have been he would have been an absolute playmaker for Purdue, and I think not having him on the field is kind of hurt. So I don't think we're as deep as wide receiver as maybe we were led to believe. With all the recruiting rankings and Jeff Brom, we all thought that the wide receiver room is really deep, but that might not be the case. I mean, the coaches are literally only playing basically three wide receivers. They're playing Burks, obviously, Sheffield, and Yassine's been amazing this year. But outside those three, man, they're barely playing anyone. I think Tron Tibbs he played a little bit last weekend, and Dixon Fields played a little bit. But outside those five, that's basically it. I think, they gave Rice a shot against Syracuse. He missed a couple blocks. That was kind of it for him. I don't know. We maybe see a little bit of him later on, maybe not. But the one guy I thought we would see, who I thought was pretty good last year, is Andrew Sowinski. I thought he'd be pretty good on this offense, but I believe that's more of a health thing. I think he got hurt in summer or fall camp, and he's played sparingly on punt returns here and there, but he's pretty much, I think he was out again this weekend. I think he's banged up. I think that's why we're not seeing Sowinski out there. Otherwise, I think he played a little bit. But see, I thought they would rotate some wide receivers a little bit more, but that's not been the case at all. They're pretty much sticking to those three, and that's it. But I agree. I would like to see more some drawn Tibbs. And the history, I was on an Iowa podcast earlier today, and the history of Iowa, there's always, Corey and I were joking, there's always some wide receiver that kind of comes out of the woodwork against them. Anthony Mahungo was one. Terry Wright was a guy that had 3 touchdowns against Iowa. Who knows? Maybe Jerron Tibbs sees the field and balls out. We'll see. I know I keep saying this, but if anybody wants to jump on and talk, the link is in the comments. If not, if you don't want to get on, feel free to leave some comments. That helps move the show along. I'll probably get off around, if nobody joins on, I'll probably get off probably around 7. My friends over at Boiler Breakdown are doing their live show tonight. If you guys haven't checked them out, they're pretty good. They do a good job. Curious though too. Also, I think we talked about Wisconsin's probably the team to beat in the Big Ten West. Who is the team to beat in the Big Ten East? Is it Penn State, or is it Michigan, or is it Ohio State? I mean, if I had to rank those teams right now, it might be Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State. Ohio State might be the third team. I think we'll learn a lot about Ohio State too. We learned quite a bit about them against Notre Dame, but that Maryland team going in there with that offense should be a pretty must-watch game. Which I think that game's at noon, if I recall. I think it's on big noon kickoff. But like I said, I'm not going to do a score prediction on the game, but if anybody wants to drop their score prediction in the comments, feel free. If you guys are feeling a Purdue win or not. Like I said, I kind of like the feeling I had last weekend of not having any feelings on it, just kind of sitting back and watching what happens, and was pleasantly surprised. So that would be great. It'd be great to be rewarded the same way. Alrighty. Another guy that's been, kind of been needed, I guess, in a way, would be who we've not seen yet is Salim Turner Muhammad, who is a pretty decent player for Stanford, kind of a cornerback. Might be able to take over for Cam Allen if he's struggling, but he's been hurt. I think he's semi-practicing now, but he didn't practice pretty much until 3 or 4 weeks ago. He's got a bad hamstring. I think he would be some nice depth in the secondary. I'll tell you what, the secondary overall was played pretty decently, especially Marquise Wilson's been a godsend. I mean, he's been an absolute stud for transfers. We hit a home run on him. Honestly, I think we hit a home run on Markevius Brown. That was a big get as well. Especially, I think most people thought Salim Turner Muhammad would be the starter, but he's obviously not been healthy. Markevius Brown's come in. No, he's been burnt once or twice, but I mean, pretty much all cornerbacks get burnt occasionally. And then I tell you what, I was really impressed with. I don't know if you guys noticed this or not, but I'm trying to think of his name. Speaking of 13s, Craig, number 13 on the defense. What is his name? Drive me nuts. But there was a play at the very end of that Illinois game where, they threw a pass to the end zone, a fade route, and he was beat a little bit, but he had absolute perfect technique that I don't know when the last time I've seen. It was Rodgers. That's right. It was Rodgers. I don't know if I've seen that technique yet from Purdue cornerback. It was pretty good, where he watched the receiver's hands, and as soon as, again, he was not looking at the ball, he was looking at the receiver's hands, and as soon as those receiver's hands went up, his hands went up, and he was able to deflect the ball. That was like pitch perfect technique, and that's a true freshman. So, well, I'm losing my voice, guys, and I think I'm going to call it a night. I appreciate you guys jumping on here. Ted, last thing from you. Overall, we seem healthy, but every injury feels like a heavy loss due to lack of depth. Yeah, I think that's a key point. This team can't afford too many injuries. We're not that deep, so we're going to see how it goes. But I appreciate you guys jumping on. Again, I wanted to get something out there tonight. I know I've said I was going to do it, on a weekly, consistent basis, but that's not happening. So with that, we'll see how it goes next week. I'll probably do a podcast as well, talking about how that Iowa game went. So with that, God bless. Boiler up. We'll see you next time.